You're watching YouTube, the cable access of the 21st century. It's Wednesday, it's 4 p.m. where I am, and it's time to talk about movies and answer your questions. Welcome to Dan's World. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dan's World. We took a week off while I was moving, but we are back in the new studio, which means there's the potential for all kinds of problems with the setup here. I'm going to check in with the comments just to make sure you can see me, you can hear me, all of that fun stuff. So it's been quite a week. Complete relocation, still building out the studio, hoping that this feed looks all right, not too dark, not too light, not too loud, not too soft. It's the constant battle that everyone is fighting on a live stream, but I'm going to do my best this week. Of course, as always, this week, I'm going to be taking your questions. So if you have a question that you want to ask, you can leave it down in the comments below and or on the live chat, I should say. I'm used to doing the pre-tapes. You can leave it in the live chat and I'll look at those. If you want to make sure that I answer your question, then you can send me a super chat because I will definitely answer all of those questions here on the show today. And then we'll look at the time that we have left and see if there's other stuff that I want to go through and look at through the rest of the comments. And, usually I prep 2 or 3 different stories for you every week. But today I prepped one main story to lead off the show. And then we'll get into the comments and we'll talk about some of the stuff that you want to talk about. And the main thing that I want to talk about today, and this may have been a story that you saw throughout the rest of this week, it's been picking up a lot of traction over the last week or so, is in regard to an actress, or actually not really an actress, an AI program, a digital actress named Tilly Norwood. Tilly Norwood was talked about at the Zurich Summit this past weekend, and it really caught the attention of a lot of people in Hollywood, a lot of people that follow the entertainment industry, people saying it's an existential threat to actors. And really, it's just an ongoing chapter in what has been a very, very vibrant discussion around artificial intelligence, what its role in creativity is, what its role in Hollywood is. So I wanted to dive a little bit more into Tilly Norwood, where Tilly Norwood came from, who created Tilly Norwood, and then my thoughts on whether this is actually on an individual level a threat to actors, as the union and many others have said, and also whether this is an existential threat to Hollywood, or whether this is really kind of all just a publicity stunt, for lack of a better word. So let's get into the origins, first of all, of Tilly Norwood. Tilly Norwood is the creation of a company called Particle 6. Particle 6 was founded by someone named Eline van der Velden. She earned a degree in physics, actually. She's very smart. Before she decided to become an actress, she made a lot of comedy videos for YouTube before she decided to become a producer on video content, as I guess the word is now. In 2016, she started a production company called Particle 6 to produce her own stuff, and she's had shows made for BBC 3, as I mentioned, several digital series. And then with the advent of AI technology, Particle 6 really moved into a full AI digital studio setup. And she has been an advocate of using artificial intelligence for a while now. She's been on the train since the very beginning. In her mindset, it is a way to, as she has said, democratize creativity, to break down some of the barriers between creators and having their ideas made. And this was a quote that she gave actually on what she believes about the use of artificial intelligence. This was given before any of this really blew up. This is with a magazine called Broadcast Now back in July. She said, quote, "AI speeds everything up. So instead of taking 3 months to get a comedy script, I would do it in a month. Instead of me taking 3 days to film a comedy, I can do it in a day. It cuts down the timeline for everything, but there are still all those human touch points and human creative checks at every stage along the way. AI doesn't have an intrinsic desire to create anything. So unless it's coming from us, it's not going to do anything. And that's why I'm not scared. It can't take my creative desire away from me." So that's her thoughts on AI. Now, a few months ago, Particle 6 debuted an AI actress named Tilly Norwood. Tilly Norwood is not a person. She is a full creation of artificial intelligence, but she has an Instagram account that you can go, and she has clips from her auditions, which are artificially generated. And she appeared first, I guess most thoroughly, in a comedy sketch that was on Particle 6's YouTube channel called AI Commissioner. AI Commissioner is about, it's set in a world where the commissioning of new shows, new series, etc., are taken over completely by artificial intelligence. This is just a clip of that sketch, but this video, it should be noted, in case you can't tell, was also fully generated by artificial intelligence. So this was sort of Tilly Norwood's debut to the world.
Tilly Norwood, 100% AI generated.
Like if a Sunday roast went to drama school and got BAFTA optimized.
But can she cry on Graham Norton?
Of course she can, and it'll be clipped, subtitled, and monetized on TikTok by lunchtime.
We're all going to hell. Got recommissioned, didn't it?
3 seasons and a podcast.
Yeah, so that was Tilly Norton's debut to the world. As a comedy sketch, as a comedy sketch, it felt like it was generated by artificial intelligence. I didn't think it was that funny. I thought that it looked like pretty much every other AI-generated video that I'd seen out there. And this wasn't something that was released in the last week. This has been out there for a while. So Tilly Norwood is not new, but the story got a lot of traction over the last weekend because Elaine van der Velden appeared at, as I mentioned, the Zurich Summit, and she was speaking about artificial intelligence and Tilly Norwood specifically. And this is what she said that really got a lot of people kind of up in arms. She said, we were in a lot of boardrooms around February time, and everyone was like, no, this is nothing. It's not going to happen. Then by May, people were like, we need to do something with you guys. When we first launched Tilly, people were like, what's that? And now we're going to be announcing which agency is going to be representing her in the next few months. And it was this that really got a lot of people's attention. There were many Hollywood stars. Emily Blunt was one of them that said, let's not do this. Natasha Lyonne posted on her social media, any talent agency that engages in this should be boycotted by all guilds. Deeply misguided and totally disturbed. Not the way, not the vibe, not the use. SAG-AFTRA released a statement on this saying, quote, SAG-AFTRA believes creativity is and should be, or it should remain, human-centered. The union is opposed to the replacement of human actors by synthetics. To be clear, Tilly Norwood is not an actor. It's a character generated by a computer program that was trained on the work of countless professional performers without permission or compensation. It has no life experience to draw from, no emotion, and from what we've seen, audiences aren't interested in watching computer-generated content untethered from the human experience. It doesn't solve any problem. It creates the problem of using stolen performances to put actors out of work, jeopardizing performer livelihoods, and devaluing human artistry. Additionally, signatory producers should be aware that they may not use synthetic performers without complying with our contractual obligations, which require notice and bargaining whenever a synthetic performer is going to be used. So reading that statement, parsing it a little bit, just reading between the lines, I'm going to guess that SAG-AFTRA is not a fan of Tilly Norwood. That's just, I'm just kind of like trying to read the tea leaves there. But Elaine van der Velden has said that this was not her intention. So she released her own statement in the last couple days on the Tilly Norwood Instagram account. And it was a pretty long statement, but it said in part, quote, to those who have expressed anger over the creation of my AI character, Tilly Norwood, she is not a replacement for a human being, but a creative work, a piece of art. Like many forms of art before her, she sparks conversation, and that in itself shows the power of creativity. I see AI not as a replacement for people, but as a new tool, a new paintbrush. Just as animation, puppetry, or CGI open fresh possibilities without taking away from live acting, AI offers another way to imagine and build stories. I'm an actor myself, and nothing, certainly not an AI character, can take away the craft or joy of human performance. I hope we can welcome AI as part of the wider artistic family, one more way to express ourselves alongside theater, film, painting, music, and countless others. When we celebrate all forms of creativity, we open doors to new voices, new stories, and new ways of connecting with each other. So that really, I think, is the question at the heart of the discussion around this specific case, which is the philosophy around AI, because what Elaine van der Velden is saying is basically, well, wait a minute, this isn't to replace people. This is to create things, to create art that is alongside the art that we know. So it's not like I'm saying get rid of another actor. It's like I'm saying, oh, well, we're going to be alongside. Although that conflicts a little bit with the statements, I think, from other people involved in Particle 6 that said, we want this actress to be the next Scarlett Johansson, which when you're trying to say that you're not looking to replace humans and part of your messaging is this is going to be the next big star, which I think by connection there would mean that you would be replacing a human or competing with a human. I don't necessarily think that those two messages meld together. And so initially, when I was doing the research for the story, I thought it was an interesting conversation between what the different definitions or how people see AI differently and Eline van der Velden's way of seeing it versus what everybody else sees it. And then is Tilly Norwood specifically a threat to Hollywood actresses and actors? And let's speak to that first, this specific case. Is she a threat? I don't think that she's a massive threat, again, individually, for a few reasons. Number one, any Hollywood agency that actually signed her would face massive backlash, would probably lose clients. And I don't really know if any agency, A, is interested in doing this, B, would be willing to take the hit that would come from doing this. Number two, when we talk about this statement of, oh, we're going to announce which agency is signing her in the next few months, I think this should actually be seen as a way of Eline van der Velden basically promoting another one of her own ventures, because it was announced a few months ago that not a few months ago, but a few weeks ago, that she is starting her own talent studio for hyper-real digital stars to manage these digital stars. So I think that partially when she said, oh, we're going to be announcing which agency is going to be representing her in a few weeks, I wouldn't be too shocked if that announcement is, oh, it's my agency. It's the one that I started to introduce and manage stars. It's basically self-promotion. And that's another thing that I think was involved with this, is I think that this was essentially an AI advocate and the founder of an AI company who created an AI star, promoting that star and hyping that star up and saying, this is going to be the next big thing. She is an advocate for AI, but she's also an owner of this company. And so I think that this was about generating publicity. And guess what? It worked. We're talking about it here on this show. It's been in the industry news for the past several days. How many people had heard of Tilly Norwood or Particle 6 or Eline van der Velden before the last week or so? If this was to whip up headlines and to get people talking, that was very much mission accomplished, because that's exactly what's happening. So this, to me, wasn't as much the announcement of a new star to compete with Hollywood. It was almost a marketing push for this company and for this new star. And so I think that's also part of it. That's why I don't say like, oh, this is going to be a huge threat. But there was a lot more to this when I started digging in deeper. And it really kind of leads me to my conclusion with this whole thing, which is that I'm not necessarily sold that Tilly Norwood is a huge threat to Hollywood. But the more that I looked into Eline van der Velden and the more that I looked into her thinking on things and her philosophy behind things, that's what I think is the existential threat. And that's what I wanted to wrap this up with a deeper look beyond just the Tilly Norwood thing and into what her philosophy is and how dangerous I think that philosophy can be if it is further and further accepted in creative circles in Hollywood and elsewhere. The first thing that I should note is that I am very much not a fan of something that the SAG-AFTRA statement brought up about Tilly Norwood, which is the intellectual property question. How was this model trained? Was it trained on the work of people who didn't give their consent? And that is a question that has been posed to Eline van der Velden in the past. And she did not have a great answer to that question. This is from the same interview that I talked about earlier. This is from the Broadcast Now interview back in July. She was asked about that, about intellectual property rights. And she said, quote, "That is something between the tech companies and the rights holders who are fighting it out, and who pays how much for the library that the AI software is trained on. But I would say that when I employ a director, I don't question them on whether they've paid licenses for everything that has trained them and made them into the directors they are." Bad answer. Bad answer. I don't like that. When you are advocating the use of technology, and one of the major questions around the use of that technology is, does this infringe on the rights of other artists? And your answer to that question is, well, other people are figuring that out, but I'm not really that worried about it because, I don't ask other people that question anyway. No, I don't like that. If that philosophy, if that approach is how people start looking at intellectual and creative property rights going forward, that is bad news. So I don't like that answer from her. But this was also, when we look at her overall philosophy regarding artificial intelligence and creativity, I also think that her definition of what a creative is and what creativity is something that should be taken into consideration. So it's about a minute long. It's selections from an interview that she did back in May. So again, these are a few weeks or months old, but I think that this is very telling when we're looking at this whole Tilly Norwood thing and the fact that she seems to be so at odds with other people about what a threat to creativity is, or even what a creative is. I think this is very telling about her overall philosophy. So let's look at the clips from this interview.
I'm a creative, right? So this is the first thing I always tell people. I don't want creativity to be replaced. The joy I get out of using AI is the fact that to visualize or realize one of my creative ideas, I can do it with less. So I don't need to spend a whole year of my life filming a short film and scrambling a budget together in order to film that. I can just do it by myself. And I think that will democratize creativity, and it means that more young creatives can put their ideas out there. I don't think AI will remove creativity. I just think it helps. For me, it's the same transition as for accountants that had to suddenly use Excel, and they were all worried that their jobs were gone. No, their jobs weren't gone. They just moved to doing it on Excel instead. And I think it's the same. Creatives aren't losing their jobs at all. They're just using different tools. The most frustrating thing is when you have that feeling that you know that something is really good, and it must have been so frustrating back in the day where you couldn't just execute it, right? Like you'd have to wait to get the money, you'd have to wait to get the crew, and you'd have to wait for all these things. And so many things never got greenlit and they never actually went into production. And that is no longer a barrier. If I were 22, I would be sat behind my desk and creating a film all in AI. It'd be wonderful.
So that, I think, is the key question here. What is a creative, and how is that defined by her and the industry? And in reading interviews with her and in those clips specifically, it seems to me that her thinking is that a creative is the person who has the idea, the person who thinks something up. And everything else, the crew, the actors, the people that would be involved in physical production, those people are impediments to that creative idea being executed. And what AI can do is to remove those people from the equation. As she said, if I were 22, I'd be sitting in a room alone making films by myself, and it'd be wonderful. If you just remove those impediments to creativity, then it democratizes the process. However, I think the main disconnect here is that many people, including myself, have a fundamentally different definition of what a creator is. Because I think when you're talking about movies and shows and things like that, the crew and the actors and the people that make it along with you are creators. They are as essential to the creative process as the person who thought of the idea. Obviously, yes, it starts with the person who thinks up the idea. But if that's the philosophy that overtakes Hollywood, and listen, it's wrapped in a very appealing package. And I don't necessarily think that she's got nefarious intentions. I just don't think that she's fully thought through the consequences of what that philosophy might be. Because if the thinking overtakes Hollywood, that the creative is only the person who thinks of the idea, and that if you can make a process that is faster, and that's the other thing she said, the great thing about AI is it's faster and it's cheaper. If the thinking is, let's cut everyone out of the creative process because they're just impediments to slow things down, and embrace this process, which involves a very small amount of people, then that's going to be a better way of doing things. That thinking, I believe, will lead to largely the death of the entertainment industry as we know it. That's the existential threat. It's not Tilly Norwood. It's that kind of thinking. The idea that the creative, the person who originates the idea, is the only person who really matters in the process. And that if you can just figure out a way to cut out all that other stuff, don't wait for the crew, don't wait for the money to actually go out and shoot it. Just use AI to do it. That's bad. And I see where she's coming from, in the sense of, yes, it is appealing to be able to have an idea and be able to make that idea with fewer resources. She talks about the fact that she already did that when she was making stuff for YouTube and when she was making stuff for the BBC, that she had figured out ways to streamline the production process to make it faster and cheaper. But there's a difference between streamlining a production process or going in with an artist who's using, a visual effects artist or an audio engineer or something, and having AI help to streamline their process in a sense that it is a tool that assists them in their work, does not replace them, but assists them in their work. That's one thing. I don't really agree with the whole accountants, were afraid that Excel was going to replace them, because Excel was a tool to help them do their jobs faster. Excel does not replace an accountant, whereas many of the things that she's talking about, the idea of making a project using only AI, that does replace so many different people. But in her mind, that's just streamlining the creative process. And I think that is the threat. And I don't, like I said, I don't think that she is coming in saying, I'm going to destroy an industry. But that's, I think, what could potentially destroy the industry going forward. And I think that's what so many people are fighting for. AI is not a simple discussion. I've had disagreements with people last year when we were talking about the whole thing with The Brutalist and the fact that they used AI tools to work on some of the accents. The audio engineers used it to work on vowel and consonant sounds, et cetera. There were plenty of people that weren't even in favor of that. I think that the discussion around it being used to generate some of the art, I think, is a much more complicated discussion. But this, to me, this is where the fight is. This is where the fight is. And I think that everybody is talking about Tilly Norwood because it's sort of the big flashy story right now. But I think that this is where the conversation should be. It is the fight over the definition of creativity, what a creative is, and what kind of influence they should have. And if more people embrace the approach that Alina Vandervelden has, that is the existential threat to Hollywood and to creativity that we've been talking about. So, that was an interesting road to go down for me because it led me to some places I didn't know. And it's also why I don't want to just, when I'm doing a story here on the show or when I'm making a separate video for the channel, and I may actually clip out what we just did as its own little clip and put it up this weekend, just to see if people might want to see it just sort of on its own. But it's why I don't want to just report what's happening or go into a news story and read the headlines and say, oh, people are upset about this Tilly Norwood thing. And I like to do that research. I like to do that deep dive because to me, that was the story. And it's because I said, well, wait a minute. I want to know more about her. I want to know more about what she thinks. I want to know more about what she thinks about AI. And I think that's what people should be focusing on. It's not just the headlines. It's what's behind those headlines. That's the interesting part of the story. So I hope that you found it as interesting as I did. We've got a few questions that have come in. And if we don't get any more, then hey, it might be a short show today. I know I yammered on already for about what? Good grief, almost half an hour. My goodness. Well, I got kind of worked up about that. Let's see what questions have come in for you. First of all, this is from FreakStomp95 who said, Dan, hope the move went well. You pinned my tweet back when I saw you were never really here in theaters, and it's because of your reviews and your passion for movies that makes me less ashamed of my geekiness for movies and numbers. Thank you so much, and thank you for that super chat. That's very generous of you. I remember that, but I nuked my Twitter account, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I was kind of impulsively just did it because I was sick of the whole thing. But yes, I actually do remember that tweet that you sent because that was that's why I love to review movies. When he's like, "Oh, I never would have seen this movie. I remember that, and thank you." And I'm glad that, you know, I just want that army to join me. You know, like, yes, there's more of you out there. We're all nerdy and we like numbers and stuff. Don't hide it. It's great. Let's talk about it. So I'm glad to hear from you again, and thank you for that super chat. This is from Zach Likes Things, who says, "I've been a big fan of Benicio del Toro and his latest movies, Phoenician Scheme and One Battle After Another, but have never seen another performance of his. Okay, except for FNL." Any Rex. FNL. I'm sure FNL will, the definition of FNL will come to me at some point. Well, first of all, he's great in Traffic. He won the Academy Award for that, and he's fantastic in that movie. It's a dramatic role. If you haven't seen Usual Suspects, I know it can get dicey with the other members of the cast there, but he's hilarious in that. He was, I think, one of the standout actors in that movie. More of a comedic Benicio del Toro role. Not a whole lot of him in that movie, but it's one of my favorites of his. Those are the first two that jump to mind, just because sort of his breakout role and then his Academy Award winning role. I generally have not seen a movie where I'm like, oh yeah, no, Benicio del Toro wasn't very good in that. I believe, unless I'm wrong, am I wrong that he was in Snatch, the Guy Ritchie movie? I believe that he was, because I think I remember liking him in that, but I could be misremembering that as well. But definitely start with, especially if you want to see him really act well. Oh, Sicario, by the way. Oh my God, Sicario. Should have been nominated for an Oscar for Sicario. So yeah, start with Traffic and Sicario. Dramatic performances, supporting performance in Usual Suspects, kind of a breakout for him. Also in Big Top Pee-wee, if you're interested in that kind of thing. Small role in that one. Small role in the James Bond movie License to Kill. He was actually a great sort of secondary henchman in License to Kill. So those are some other early roles from Benicio del Toro. Christopher Brickner says, what are your thoughts on the first two Tron films? Those are actually on my list to watch in the next couple weeks, because I haven't seen the first one in a long time, and the second one I haven't seen all the way through, and I want to catch up before Tron Ares. Barinder Singh says, longtime massive fan, Dan. Nothing but love for your dedication, integrity, and nuanced viewpoints. Hope the move is going well. Thank you very much. It's going pretty good. It's going a bit slower than I'd like. I mean, as you can tell, the set's not done yet, but I want to get settled. You know, I don't want to just put stuff wherever. So it's taken a bit longer to get just really settled in. But it's going well. Christopher Brickner says, will you review Tron 1 and 2 before Tron Ares is released? I doubt that I'll do specific standalone reviews, but I will definitely watch them. Brian Whitlock sent a super chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. Francisco Guimares, I apologize if I mispronounced that, said generative AI is theft. They are using works of art without permission and without compensation. Work is work, pay the workers. I agree. The creative and the intellectual property rights are such an important aspect of this conversation. And anytime that there is generative AI, there needs to be a provenance and a record of what it has been trained on. Where is that work coming from? Because if you are producing something that is benefiting other people and it's off of the back of the works of others who are not being compensated, that's not right. Now, if you can build an AI model that is being generative off of a specific set of things that you know what they are, you know, et cetera, that the people are being compensated properly for it, then that's a different discussion to have. But I agree, there has to be a system in place where you know that people are not being exploited and that stuff isn't being taken from their work without their permission and without their compensation. So that is something that has been fought over, has been and needs to be continued to be fought over. I think that's one of the biggest things with generative AI is you've got to know where it's coming from. Spencer says, have you seen the FX show The Americans with Kerry Russell and Matthew Rhys? One of the best written shows ever on TV, in my opinion, and the finale is a 10 out of 10. I have not seen that show. I heard it was great. I think by the time I really heard how great it was already 2-3 seasons in or something like that. And so at that point, it feels intimidating to go back. And so I've never gone back and watched it, but I've heard it's great. One of these days, maybe when I retire, never, I'll be able to catch up on it. Master Ron Concerts and in a super chat. Thank you so much, Master Ron Concerts. Geek Factor says, hi, Dan. So Man of Tomorrow, a follow-up to a first Superman movie, but not really a sequel, and it being a team-up. Sounds familiar, right? There are some similarities between Man of Tomorrow and Batman v Superman. But we'll see. It depends on the scope of it, because I think the thing with Batman v Superman wasn't just that it was a sequel, but also that it was introducing so much inside of a quote unquote Superman sequel. You're introducing Batman, you're introducing Wonder Woman and the Justice League and Lex Luthor. And I think if it's a bit more limited in scope, then some of those comparisons fall away. Corey Ross says, hey, Dan, any plans to try to bring back Friends from Work? That is constantly something that is being discussed, and it's largely on me just because I've been so busy. I was texting with Spencer and Joe last night about a couple things, and Spencer encouraged me to, as he said, and often says, monetize our friendship. So, yes, eventually at some point, but there's just a lot going on. Master on Concert says, hey, Dan, tried looking at the top movies of all time adjusted for inflation, and it's rough and contradictory. Would you do a vid about it maybe for the end of the year? Well, it is rough and contradictory because there's a lot of different ways to judge it. I would say anytime I make a definitive list of anything, especially things like inflation, where there are a lot of different variables, it can often be more trouble than it's worth, just because sometimes I feel like it muddies the picture more rather than clarifies it. Honestly, I would just kind of look at the different lists. There are titles in common, Sound of Music, Star Wars, movies like that, Gone with the Wind, obviously. So just kind of look at the titles that are in common and go from there. Christopher Brickner says, thoughts on Alien Earth? Yeah, I had meant to do the review last week before I moved. I actually came over here. So last week, the internet was installed in this house on Tuesday, which was the day of the finale. So I came over here. The internet was installed here, watched the show here because that meant I didn't have internet at my old place. So sat on the floor here in this house, watched the show, got home and sat down in my chair to write the review. And I was so tight because I had been moving stuff all day, really for the last several days. I was so tired, I literally fell asleep in my chair writing the review for Alien Earth. Next day was moving day, and I just haven't really caught up yet. So I will say that I enjoyed most of Alien Earth, but I really don't think they stuck the landing, and maybe that's partially on me because I didn't really know it was going to be a multi-season show. But even if it is a multi-season show, I think that there's a way you can tell a story satisfactorily inside of a cliffhanger / multi-season format. And I don't think that they did that very well. So I would say it got off to a fantastic start. But the ending really left me disappointed. Christopher Brickner says, Benicio del Toro is in Snatch. He's bad in The Last Jedi. Well, yeah, I'm not even going to go into Last Jedi. Brian Whitlock says, how would you recommend getting Friends into more artistic, less mainstream films? I struggle to find the right films to show them that are slower. That's a good question. I would say find a director who you like, who's made the kind of films that you want to get your friends into. Then find the movie that director has made that's the most accessible or the most mainstream, if you will. The one that's the least like a art film or whatever, artistic, less mainstream film. The one that's the most mainstream. Show them that movie. And if you like that movie, or if they like that movie, then say, oh, well, if you like this movie, the same director also made this movie. And then maybe show them like the second next mainstream film from that director. It's sort of like the frog in the boiling water. If you can get them hooked on a director using their most accessible to the mainstream film, and then draw them slowly deeper into the waters of the more obscure stuff or abstract stuff, I think that could work. I mean, some people just don't like those movies, but there's some people that are like, I'm not so sure about that. And if you can just kind of lure them in slowly, then I think that would work. So, for example, if you're trying to get somebody into Kubrick, you don't start with Eyes Wide Shut. You maybe start with, The Shining or Dr. Strangelove or one of those movies, and then go, oh yeah, did you like that movie? Maybe watch Full Metal Jacket, and you watch Full Metal Jacket, and you're like, oh, did you like that? At some point in the middle, you maybe throw Barry Lyndon at them, and then eventually you're getting into the kind of more esoteric stuff. That'd be my suggestion. I mean, you also have to understand that maybe sometimes they just might not be interested, but I think a lot of people are if you just get them hooked You got to get them hooked first. Fluffy Pro says you have to either erase plaid shirts or graphic tees from existence. Which do you choose to keep? Erase plaid shirts or graphic tees? Probably graphic tees. Yeah, I just like a good plaid shirt. It's I don't know. Between the two, I think I'd keep the plaid shirts. I can express my love for Jurassic Park literally any number of ways. I don't see nothing on the set right now, but yeah. Nearly a tough choice, but I'd say graphic tees. Sakaki HDN JJBA Chrono says, "Hi Dan, hope the new house is swell. I recently saw Hamilton for the first time and I was amazed at how many movie previews were shown that were also on your fall 2025 preview video." Well, that's good. That means I did my job, that I'm hitting movies that are coming out. Can you hear the lawnmower outside? I hope not. Zayan Jahangir, and apologies again if I didn't get that right, says, "Do you think that Disney could overtake Warner Brothers in market share with Avatar 3 and Zootopia?" Well, I think they definitely will, because I believe, unless I'm wrong, that Warner Brothers is now done for the year. I think they might be, or if they're not, they certainly don't have anything on the scale of Disney left for the year. So Disney will absolutely overtake Warner Brothers in market share because they're very close right now. And I expect Avatar 3 and Zootopia to both be very big movies. Juha Kanistu says, Sisu 2 has been getting good first reviews. Any plans on seeing it? First one was great in its genre as well. Yeah, I got to see the first one still. I don't know if it's going to play anywhere near me, but yeah, I love a good action movie. Spencer said, first, a favorite episode of Curb. Mine is Michael J. Fox. It's been a while since I saw Curb Your Enthusiasm. I really like the Seinfeld reunion season is good, but I also really like the season where Larry takes over as the lead and the co-lead and the producers. I just like that whole arc, and I think it's the finale where it's like the opening night and things aren't going well, and they got a lot of people. I think Jerry Seinfeld came in and did a cameo. That was a really fun episode. And then I also liked the season where they were opening the restaurant. I remember he fired the chef because the chef wore a toupee when he showed up, but he didn't for the interview, and so he thought he'd lied to him. And then there was the thing about the bathrooms where they didn't have the dividing stalls, and there was a whole fight about whether they're going to remodel the whole thing. Those are some big standouts for me. Christopher Brickner says, problem with adjusting for inflation is films from before home media. Films like Gone with the Wind got re-released every few years, so they keep saying, I know. Listen, I understand. And that's the thing is I'm the first to say it. Adjusting for inflation is not a perfect metric. There are so many variables that go into adjusting for inflation. For me, it is simply a historical measure of this is X amount of dollars that were made in the past. This is how much X amount of dollars translates to today. Not it would have made, not it wouldn't have made, not this. No, it's just X dollars in the past equals X dollars today. That's it. That's all I use it for. That's all I've ever used it for. Trust me, I understand. So many variables on adjusting for inflation. Zach Lights thing says, thoughts on Zach Kreger doing Resident Evil? If he's got a good take on it, sure, why not? I just don't want him to be thrown into the Hollywood machine because he's a hot name right now and sort of subject to studio whims. So yeah, if he's got a great take. Black Bag says, Friends from Work, episode 3, or we riot. Well, yeah, it's been almost 2 years, so I think I've left you guys waiting long enough. VNKZ27 says, how do you think the 100% tariff on foreign movies would work? I mean, I talked about it on Charts. I made a video about that on this channel saying, I don't know how that would work. I don't think anybody knows how that would work because it's not like a car or a piece of iron or something. It's is it produced outside? Is it stuff that's only of foreign? There's so many variables. I don't think anybody knows how it would work. And if we're going to do it, they do have to figure out how it would work. I made a video about that and it got me on the government list apparently because they turned me down for a job on a video that was going to be sponsored by a government agency. So government was not happy I talked about it, but that's a great question. Jason Webster says, as someone who's received higher education in journalism and film and media, I appreciate your deep dives in the film industry. Dan, thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. I've always thought if I lived in a different time, I would be either a teacher or like a reporter, or maybe I would have gone to journalism school and been a journalist because I love doing the deep dives and stuff like that. Sakaki HTN JJBA Chrono says, also, I wanted to ask in regards to Hamilton. 1, what is your opinion of the film? 2, do you think other longer movies should have interludes? Well, I had never seen the show. So I watched it on Disney Plus back in 2020 when they put it out on Disney Plus. I'd never seen the show, and I never actually listened to the soundtrack because I wanted to see the show live, and I'd never gotten to New York to see it. It had come to LA, I think, once or twice, but it sold out instantly. So I never got a chance to see it in LA. But I said, well, I'm going to wait till I can see it on stage. But then just the appeal of being able to see it with the original cast, and also because I was running a movie channel in 2020 and there weren't a whole lot of things to review. So Hamilton was a great opportunity to review it. I really liked it. I liked the show. I think that I love that they were able to capture so many of the talent involved in that show forever on film, on a very high quality production. So I really liked it. Do I think other longer movies should have interludes? I mean, I don't see the problem with it if you can structure the film in a way that it doesn't arrest the narrative momentum. I think that, so for example, I saw the Roadshow version of The Hateful Eight, which did have the intermission, and Quentin Tarantino structured that film so it doesn't feel like it just stops in the middle. It has a rising action. It's got a big beat in the middle. You stop. There's a bit of a cool down. He even had a kind of a warm back up to it after intermission, and then you go into the rest of the movie. And that used to be common. It used to be that almost any movie that was 3+ hours long had an intermission. Gone with the Wind has an intermission. I think Dr. Zhivago had an intermission. Lots of different movies had an intermission. West Side Story, I'm pretty sure, had one. So, yeah, I think if you can structure your film that way, but I don't think that every movie necessarily needs one. Like, you take a longer movie, like, for example, let's say Schindler's List. I don't know if necessarily an intermission would benefit that movie, because I don't think you want that escape and then go back in. So I think that more should have them, but they can definitely work. Paul says, keep on adjusting. Don't worry, Paul. I absolutely will do that. Fluffy Pro says, what do you think of all these re-releases lately? It's getting people in theaters. If it's getting people in theaters and helping to keep that industry afloat, then I'm fine with it. And it's interesting to see what people actually are interested in going back to see. I love that. I mean, Revenge of the Sith doing as well as it did earlier this year was like crazy to me, but it just kind of shows you that there's a generation that wanted to see it on the big screen. So I'm all for it. Geek Factor says, want to selfishly ask about my other massive passion, board games. Are you into them at all? There's some great ones based on movies and TV. I have played board games. I live alone, so it's kind of hard for me to play board games a lot because most of them need other people, and there's not a whole lot of other people around usually. So I don't play them a whole bunch, but I've generally found that I enjoy playing them. So yeah, I like board games. Shop 708 says, I'm 51, AI actors. WTF are we doing? Love you, Dan. Thank you very much. I mean, again, I don't know what we're doing. I don't think anybody knows what we're doing. Christopher Brickner says, I mentioned adjusting for inflation. That wasn't in criticism. I like how you do it. I was more letting others know what the biggest problem is. I mean, sure. I mean, yeah, I may have internalized that a little bit, but again, I think when you say you shouldn't, or there's a problem with, or it's not, you know, if you discredit adjusting for inflation, again, I think that it's sort of a blanket statement, not knowing how that person is doing it or not knowing how they intend it. I don't agree with adjusting for inflation to say that this movie, if it was released in 1978, would have made this amount of money, or if this 1978 movie, if it was released today, would have made this amount of money. It shouldn't be used that way, but I think that people often try to say, well, adjusting for inflation doesn't work because this. There's more to it than that. So yeah, I may have internalized that a little bit, but I'm also just not a fan of blanket statements saying like, well, here's the problem with it because of X thing, because that may not be a factor in how that person is looking at those numbers. Jason Webster says, I always encourage people to watch and support international and foreign cinema. This gives one a well-rounded perspective into different approaches to film and storytelling. What is your view, Dan? I am 100% in agreement. A lot of people, I think, tend to throw, probably because in video stores and on Netflix, although Netflix has kind of broadened it a little bit, but international cinema, foreign films are usually thrown into one category. If you go to Blockbuster back in the 90s, it was like comedy, drama, action, international. And people think it's just one thing. And there are movies in every genre that you love that are made in other countries. Comedies, dramas, horror movies, animation, all of it. They've all, and animation, again, not a genre, it's a medium, but anyway, I don't want to overgeneralize there, but that's the thing that I think is important for people to recognize is there are different kinds of stories being told in every different way in international film and in other countries. And it's not all just one generic foreign films. So yes, branch out. If you love good comedy, see if there's a great comedy that comes from a different country. Or if you love, look at what we're doing with Demon Slayer right now and with Flow winning the Academy Award. Like we're looking at these international animation films now. They're getting the recognition here in the United States. And Parasite obviously did a lot for that by winning Best Picture. But the idea that great stories, if you live in the US or if you are a fan of Hollywood films, there's still just as many great stories made outside of the United States and in different countries. You just have to go out and find them. It's not all just one thing. So I agree with you. Eric Ferris says, hey, Dan, have you seen Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes? I can't say that I have. No, I can't say that I have. Well, this is quite a name. Stuckman's Hot Bottom. Okay. Kind of weird because I know Chris. Hi, Dangerous Dan. I live 45 minutes away from Hobbiton. What were your highs and lows of your trip to New Zealand? And also the movie trivia showdown. Well, geez, those could both be their own episodes. My highs and lows of a trip to New Zealand. Well, let's just stick with the highs on that one. Gorgeous country. I mean, we went from the top of the North Island pretty much to the bottom of the South Island. So just stunning how different and how many different kinds of country from the mountains and then down with all of just a gorgeous place. Every different kind of scenery. I can see why it was such a logical thing for Peter Jackson, in addition to being from New Zealand, to make Lord of the Rings in New Zealand, or why he saw that Lord of the Rings was the perfect place or New Zealand was the perfect place to make it, because it has everything. So just a beautiful country. The people there were incredibly nice. And I just, for me as a Lord of the Rings fan, to see all of these things that you see on screen and you think they look so gorgeous on screen, and then to see them in real life, and it's 10 times more beautiful than you could have imagined. I remember we went to the top of, I believe it's called Mount Sunday, which is where they built Edoras. They built the Golden Hall up there. And I remember getting to the top and looking out, and you've seen that vista on film, but I just remember looking out and thinking to myself, like, no picture, no painting, no shot in a film could ever properly convey how beautiful this is. So just a gorgeous country, great people. Hobbiton was so much fun to visit. I love that it was kept and preserved as it is. And it's the closest to stepping into a movie that you could ever possibly get, because you're literally just walking through Hobbiton, and it looks and it feels, and you don't see the artifice, and it's so beautiful. So yeah, I love New Zealand. I love to go back again. Highs and lows in the movie trivia showdown. I mean, I think you can probably see those in the videos and stuff. Low point being obviously that the time I lost that big, kind of underdog match to Andrew Guy, just because not because I lost, but because I was not properly prepared for that match, and I didn't know what to expect, and I was really caught flat-footed, and just not a pleasant experience for me. Highs, I mean, there's so many to count. I love playing on a team with John Roca. I love playing on a team with Ben Bateman. I love being on the different factions that I was on. The dungeon was really fun, and just bonding with them, and also working with Kate, and then all of the live events specifically. I loved doing those live events, and that New York match where I won the belt back from Ethan. That was like a top 10 moment for me. That was incredible. Dan B says, is there a way to convert K-pop Demon Hunters Netflix hours watched to how much money that would be at the box office? No, I don't think that there is, because that in that way you would have to be predicting human behavior. So even if you could say, okay, it's got X amount of view hours globally on Netflix. First of all, Netflix doesn't break down the view hours by country. So you wouldn't know how many of those view hours came from the US and the box office there versus other countries. Secondly, you can't really predict that, just because somebody watched K-pop Demon Hunters at home, that they would have gone to see it at the movies. So I think that that's also part of it, of just trying to figure out. I think there's too many variables. You could say something like, oh, okay, well, it has X many watch hours. This is this many views. If you were to apply that to the average ticket price, it would be this many dollars. But I don't think that would be really representative of saying this is how many people would have gone. And even then, even if you did that, you can't break it down by country. And that's a big difference between how much a ticket costs in the US versus how much one costs in Japan or South Korea or France or Germany. So that would be very difficult to do with any degree of accuracy. That's the thing. If you want it to be accurate, that would be very difficult to do. Paul said, although one battle didn't win the box office, is it still a win for WB? Well, I mean, I think for the, we'll see on the awards side. I think critically it is absolutely a win for Warner Brothers because the critics love it and it's got great audience scores and good recommendation. We'll see how it does in week number 2. Box office wise, didn't come out of the gate extremely strong. We'll see what its staying power is, if it can hang around and show some good legs, or if it does well at the Oscars, for example, and they're able to put it back out, or if it has big numbers on streaming, etc. I'd say it's not a loss for Warner Brothers because at a minimum, worst case scenario, they got an extremely well-reviewed, well-liked film that I think was also a very good technical achievement from a very successful director and stands well in his filmography. So in that degree, in that way, I think it is a win for Warner Brothers. Christopher Brickner says, for sub versus dub arguments, I prefer dubs because I'm a slow reader and I would miss a lot of the screen action and dialogue if I can't pause for 1 second. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I'm not a slow reader, but especially the first time I watch a movie, I like to take in the visuals. So if the dub is good, a lot of times I'll watch the dub first. However, I will say that I have switched over before in a movie. I've been listening to a dub and just thought, there's no, this is not a good dub. I got to go to the original audio because it's not done well. All right, I think we only have 1 or 2 questions left, and we're at about an hour. So if you have any final questions, you can send them in now. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up soon. Nomadic Kitty says, no question, just to say I love you, appreciate you. Well, thank you, Nomadic Kitty. I really appreciate that. I appreciate you for saying that. Let me do a quick scan through the comments and see if there's anything that I feel like we should address. Let's see. Sotheby Chung says, interlude for movies seems like a better idea than the 25 minutes of commercials they now put in. Would at least give movie theaters more of an incentive to show longer prestige movies. By the way, huge fan. I would agree with you there. I mean, yeah, people are like, an intermission would be too long, and there's 25 minutes of previews, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's see. Let's see. Sean Trindell says there are many board games that have solo play modes or even designed for solo play. Okay, well, I might have to look at that. Number one says, or no one says, in Italy, all movies and theaters have a midpoint intermission, useful for bathroom break, but can be jarring as there's no easing into it. That's interesting. I've heard that there are some places that just put an intermission in, whether there's one there or not. I think that you have to plan for it. I think it's got to be structured for it. You've got to build up to it. Let's see. Stephen Atwood says, what the hell is Friends from Work? Friends from Work is a podcast I did with Spencer Gilbert and Joe Starr, my friends from Screen Junkies, aka What Used to Be Work. And it's a great podcast to do, but between our 3 schedules, we have done 2 episodes over the course of about, I would say, 3 years. So yeah, not exactly an ambitious production schedule. Meter says Full Metal Jacket is probably the best one for new audiences. It's one of them, but I don't know if it'd be the best one for a first time watcher of Kubrick films, because it does get, it gets a little Kubricky. Let's see. Let's see if there's anything else that I want to pull up. It's tough to scan as I go and not just leave a whole bunch of dead air. No, I think that is it. Let's see if we got any more things that came in before we go, and then we'll go. Another one from Stuckman's Hot Bottom, Best Jaws sequel, the Meg movie. Best Jaws sequel / the Meg movie / Sharknado movie. Of the ones I've seen, that the answer to that question is easily Jaws 2. And another one for Christopher Bickner. Freaker Friday did well given budget despite gap. Yeah, it really has done well. It had great legs in theaters. It did great after its opening weekend. All right, I think that's it. So we had a long story about the future of the entertainment industry and a bunch of great fan questions. That's been great. Also, hey, you know what? Talk about bearing the lead. I guess I probably should have mentioned this. Kind of cool news. I got notified this past week, just a couple days ago, that I was approved. I think this is my 4th chance to cover Sundance. So I got press accreditation for Sundance. I'm planning travel and everything right now. So that's going to be really fun. That's on my top 3 film festival. The 2 that I really wanted to cover the most film festival wise were Sundance and Cannes. And so Sundance, it looks like it's going to get scratched off the list in January. So that's fun news. And honestly, I probably am going to do a whole show about that, because I may do a little bit of a, if you want to listen, it's going to be great, but it's also going to be expensive. So I'm budgeting that out right now. But yeah, I don't know why I didn't think to mention that at the top of the show. I'm going to be going to Sundance in January. That's fun times. So yeah, stay tuned for more about that, and stay tuned for more about news and box office and movie reviews and all that stuff as I continue to build out and get the studio in shape. Thank you all for watching it. Thank you for everyone who sent in a question and who tunes in here on Wednesdays. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.